Thank you for joining us on our Vintage Christmas Stocking Knit Along. This is week 3. Last week we did the cuff of our stocking and the leg. You can see over here we have our knit 2 together. And on one side we do knit 2 together, and on the other side we do a PSSO or pass slip stitch over. So next we're going to divide the heel and the instep. So we've got our work facing right side facing us, and you're going to need 3 stitch holders for this next part. So with the right side facing you, you're going to divide your stitches. So you're going to slip the first 13 stitches onto the first stitch holder. That's going to be the right side of your work. The next is the 27 stitches onto another stitch holder. We are going to use not just our stitch holders, but we're also going to use this needle. I've got my extra stitch holders are holding another piece of work. So this is the right side of our work. We're going to slip the 13 stitches on. It is right side facing. I know that can be confusing. We've got right and left, and then we've got right side and wrong side. So we're right side facing, right side of our work. So here are our 13 stitches. We slipped them onto our stitch holder. We're going to slip the next 27 stitches onto our knitting needles here. I'm using that in lieu of a 3rd stitch holder. You do where it works best for you. I only had 2 here at the moment. Like I said, I had another piece resting. Let's say they're resting on my other stitch holders. So we slipped on our 27 stitches right here. That is our 27th. They're sitting on these unused needles. And then we're going to slip the last 13 stitches onto our stitch holder. This will be the left side of our work. So we have all of our work divided. So looking at here, this is our right side and this is our left side. So it's important to distinguish those two. Oh, looks like I dropped a stitch. Slip that back on. Okay, so we're going to begin with our left side. So let's turn our work. And here we're going to start beginning on this side. We're going to use our contrasting color. So let's pull that out. And we're going to leave an extra long tail. And I'm going to do this 2 ways. The first way, I'm just going to knit right off of my stitch holder. The second way, I'm going to put them on my needles first. I definitely have a preference. Let's see if you can guess what that is. Using our coordinating color, white, and with the wrong side facing you, we're going to work row 1. Row 1 is purling to the end of the row. There's 13 stitches total. If you have guessed already that I prefer to keep my stitches on the needle and knit off the needle versus the stitch holder, then you would be correct. So neither way is wrong. This is just not my favorite way to do it. You do what works best for you. Knitting, it's all about comfort. If you're not comfortable doing it, try it a different way. Okay, let's just set the stitch holder aside. We're going to need this again later. We're going to turn our work and work row 2. For row 2, we are going to slip the first stitch and then knit 12. It is very important that you get your slip stitches correct because these are the stitches that you'll be picking up along the side when we start working the instep. So we're going to slip 1 and knit 12 all the way to the end. In the beginning of this tutorial, you're going to see that we're going to go through pretty much every single stitch. As we keep going, we will start prompting you to meet us at the end of the row and giving you more opportunities to pause, fast forward, rewind, that sort of thing. So this definitely moves faster towards the end of this tutorial. Just keep that in mind. So we finished row 2 and we're back to row 1. So in this part, we're going to repeat rows 1 and 2 8 more times. So you're going to want to pause this video. This is a great time to pause. And then if you would like to meet us, we'll pick back up at the end of row 18. Finishing up row 18 here, we're going to start row 19, and this is where we're going to start turning our heel. So if we look at the way our heel is here, this is the front or the instep. We're going to make sure our work turns towards our stocking, and this is the back of the stocking here. So that being said, when we turn, we got to work more stitches on one side of our work than the other. And you'll see how this goes. We're not going to finish the row to begin with. We're just going to work a couple of stitches and then turn. So for row 19, we're going to purl 2. So we're purling 2 stitches. And then we are going to purl 2 together. Let's slip that right back onto the needles. Arrange our stitches a little bit better and start again. So we're going to purl 2 together and then purl 1. And now on these 2 needles, we have a total of 12 stitches. So we decreased by 1, so no longer 13, now we have 12. For row 2, for row 20, we're going to slip 1 and knit the last 3 stitches. See the nice line forming here on our turn? I really love these little details that are seen in these stockings. They're so cute. For row 21, we're going to purl 3. So 1, 2, and purl 3. Then we're going to purl 2 together. Notice right here is our slipped stitch. So we're going to purl 2 together, purl 1. And now we have 11 stitches total on both needles. For row 22, we're going to slip our first stitch, and then we're going to knit 4. So we're about halfway through this turn. For row 23, we're going to purl 4. One, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to purl 2 together. Notice that's the slipped stitch. Oh, let's do that again. So I'm going to purl the slip stitch and the next stitch together, and then purl 1. That completes row 23, and we have 10 stitches now on both needles. For row 24, we're going to slip the first stitch, knit the 5 stitches remaining on the left needle. You can see our decrease is a little bit better now. For row 25, we're going to purl the first 5 stitches, and then we're going to purl 2 together. Again, notice that we're purling together the slipped stitch from the previous row and then purling 1. For row 26, we're going to slip the first stitch and then we're going to knit 6. Oop, let's knit. For row 27, we're going to purl 6, purl 2 together, and then purl 1 for a total of 8 stitches. This is also the last row of our left heel. So here we're going to purl 2 together and then purl 1 for a total of 8 stitches. At this point, we are going to cut our yarn, leaving a long tail to seam, and place the remaining 8 stitches on the stitch holder. Now we're going to turn our work so we're right side facing, so we're talking about right side, wrong side, and we're going to work the right side of our heel. We're going to do the same thing, except for this time I'm going to slip my stitches onto a needle before I begin working them. So we're going to begin working the right side of our heel the same way we worked the left side of the heel. We're just going to do it a little bit opposite. So using our contrasting color white, and with the right side facing you, we're going to work row 1. On row 1, we're going to knit to the end of the row, and when we're finished, we'll have 13 stitches on our needle. Make sure to use an extra long tail for seaming. One thing to notice is that our stitches don't quite look the same as they would on the other, if we were working from the other side, like we did before. This can throw off some new knitters, but as long as you're not twisting your loops, you should be just set and knitting this as you normally would. So we finished row 1 by knitting all the way across to the end. We're going to begin row 2 with a slip 1, and then we purl the remaining 12 stitches on our needles. We're going to repeat rows 1 and 2 8 more times. This is a great time to pause this video until you reach the end of row 18. Finishing up with row 18 right here, we're going to turn our work and we're going to begin what's called turning the heel. This time it's going to be on the right side of our work. Last time we did the left side. We're going to do about the same thing. We're just going to make sure that they mirror each other. Again, we're only going to work a few stitches at a time, just like we did here, to make our work turn. As you can see, there's significantly more rows worked on one side of the work than the other. We're beginning row 19. We're going to knit 2 stitches, slip the next stitch, knit 1 stitch, and pass the slipped stitch over. That's the PSSO. We're going to knit 1 more stitch and turn our work. Altogether, we will have 12 stitches on both of our needles. We would have decreased by 1. On row 20, we're going to slip the first stitch and purl the remaining 3 stitches on the left needle. For row 21, we are going to knit 3, so 1, 2, and knit 3 stitches. We're going to slip the next stitch, knit 1 stitch, and pass the slipped stitch over. Knit 1 and turn our work. At the end of this row, we should have 11 stitches. Row 22, we're going to slip 1 stitch and purl the remaining 4 stitches on the left needle. And see, we're about halfway done with our turning our right heel. For row 23, we're going to knit 4, slip one stitch, knit one, and pass the slipped stitch over. Knit one, and you should now have 10 stitches remaining on both needles. For row 24, we're going to slip the first stitch and purl the remaining 5 stitches on the left needle. For row 25, we're going to knit 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We're going to slip a stitch, knit 1, and again we're going to do our favorite new little skill, the PSSO. Pass slip stitch over, and then we knit 1, and now we have 9 stitches left. I think we got about 2 more rows left, so we're going to slip 1 stitch. We're going to purl 6. So 1, 2, this is for row 26. 5 and 6. Okay, for row 27, we're going to knit 5, slip 1, knit 1, pass a slip stitch over, and then knit 1, and we will finish with 8 stitches. Okay, so we're finishing our last couple of stitches from row 27 of our right heel. You can see our really cute little stitches over here, that nice line. We've got 8 stitches still on the needle, and now we're going to work the instep. So to do that, the directions say to use the same needle and our main color to pick up and knit 9 stitches along the inner edge of the right half of the heel, the 27 stitches from the stitch holder, pick up the 9 stitches along the inner edge of the left heel, and the 8 stitches that are still left on the stitch holder on the left half of the heel. Now I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this. So the first way is to do it as directed completely. But we're going to start with a little cheat. I'm still going to show you how to do both ways. My little cheat starts over here. So if you haven't done a lot of picking up stitches, or you haven't really had to do that kind of stuff yet, one thing to do is to start by placing your stitches on your needle first before you do your pickup. That way you can count your stitches, you can know exactly how many are there. It's going to become really important later when you continue working the instep and doing some decreasing. So here I'm going to put the 8 stitches that are on our left needle, 8 stitches that are on the left side of our heel onto our needle, and then we're going to pick up the 9 stitches that are along the side of the heel. So there's 2 ways to go about that as well. So you can do one of 2 things. You can pick up both sides of the stitch, or you can pick out the outer side. So the side closest to the right side of your work. And that is what we're doing here. You can see that we are picking up the side closest to the edge. And what that does is it leaves a nicer edge. There won't be any ridges. You can see on this side there's a ridge forming. So that will be on the inside of your work instead of the outside of your work. So So another way to do this, and you'll watch me, I'll pull it out and then I'll almost start sewing in to my work to pick up the stitches. I really like doing it this way too. That way I know exactly how many stitches I have on my needle. And then I know if I dropped something or if I missed something. It's nicer to know now than when you're a couple of rows ahead and you need to start decreasing. And your decreases won't be even on both sides, so it'll look a little funky. Yep, that's not fitting quite right, so let's take that off and make sure we picked up everything we were looking to pick up. This is a good time to count and make sure we do have our 9 stitches along the edge and 8 off of our stitch holder. So perfect, we have 17 total on our needles right now. So next we're going to work the 27 stitches off of our stitch holder or needle, whatever you chose to use. So we're almost finished here. If you want to continue with this method, you can pick up the remaining 9 stitches. You're not going to pick up all 17. You're going to pick up the remaining 9 stitches and work from there. You have to remember the directions haven't showed us or haven't asked us to pick up the 8 stitches that are currently on the needle yet. Okay, so we have all of our pickups there, and I showed you how to do your pickups. Now let's go over and take a look at how to pick up and knit. So again, remember you're going to work the inside, not the outside. That way you don't have any ridges. Let's take a look here. And we're going to take our main color, which is this red wine. I think we spoke about this in our first tutorial, how the red and white is always a little tricky. It does really fun things to the camera and kind of blurs some things out. So we've done some additional color correction just to make sure that you can see what we're working on at different spots. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our right and left needle, we're going to take our left needle and pick up our first stitch. Now this is going to be the only time I kind of cheat this a little bit here too. I am picking it up from the back. You can pick it up from the front if you'd like to. I've kind of tried that. It just looks awkward. It feels awkward. It doesn't quite feel right. I end up dropping it, so I'm just going to pick up the back from the back on this one stitch using my red wine and the rest of them will be from the front. If you can do it from the front, please do it. I didn't like the way it felt or it looked, so I didn't do it that way. Okay, so now we're picking up from the front and knitting along our edge. So we should be picking up a total of 9 stitches. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and our last stitch is number 9. So our other stitches are all picked up. You can continue this way if you didn't pick up those stitches and just continue picking up. Our numbers are good. Notice that we're picking up 2 under this stitch here because it is not only the beginning of that row, but it's also the beginning of our stitches along the side. So at this point, we're just going to continue knitting to the end of this row. This is a great time to pause your work and finish knitting your row, and we will see you at the end of your setup row. Okay, so you see here where our heel was and then where we picked up and knit our setup row for our gusset. So when working the gusset, the first in every alternate row is going to be a purl row. So essentially every odd row. So our first, our third, our fifth row, and so on and so forth is going to be a purl. So here we are going to start our purl row. It is the wrong side of our work, and we're just going to purl to the end. So we'll meet us back here at the end of your purl row. Okay, so we're finishing up our purl row here. And let's talk about our gusset. This is the top of the foot, so it does need some shaping. It definitely needs some shaping for it to lay correctly. When we're working row 2, we are going to decrease evenly on both sides of the heel to continue that shape work. So now we're working into row 2. This is where we begin to decrease on both sides of the heel evenly. So you'll notice on one side of the heel we're going to do a knit 2 together, and on the opposite side of the heel, to make them look symmetrical, we're going to do a PSSO. So here we're starting with knitting 14, that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stitches, 11, 12, 13, and 14. This is why it's so important that you pick up all your stitches correctly on the inside of your heels. That way when we do these decreases, they're symmetrical. So next we're going to do a knit 2 together. Okay, and then we're always going to knit 29 stitches in between your decreases. So we're actually going to decrease at the front of our decreases versus like behind the decreases. So here we're going to just go fast real quick and knit 29. So here we're just finishing up. We're gonna want to count. We want to make sure we have 14 stitches at the other end here. So 1, 2, 13, 14. Okay, so we're going to slip the first stitch, knit the next stitch, and do our past slip stitch over. So we're going to do our PSSO, dropping 2 stitches total on this row. So we went from 61 stitches to 59 stitches. We're going to then knit the remaining 14 stitches on the left needle. Row 3 is a purl row. Okay, so now we're working into row 4. So notice our decrease is at the front of our stitches, so we're only going to knit 13 this time. So here we're counting 13 stitches, and then you know we need that extra 2 to do our PSSO. So we're just finishing up the 29 stitches in between our knit two together and our PSSO. So here we did our pass slip stitch over, and then we have 13 stitches left on our needles. For row 6, we're going to knit 12. And then we're going to knit 2 together. You can kind of see where the decreases are starting to form. Make some really nice lines and shaping in our work. So we knit 2 together, and now we're going to knit 29. Okay, so we're getting closer. You can see where our decreases are. So let's just double check and count and make sure we've got the right amount of stitches and our decreases placed appropriately. Okay, so here we're going to do a slip stitch, knit 1, and do our passed slip stitch over. We should still have 12 stitches on our left hand needle. Row 7 is a purl row. For row 8, we're going to knit 11 and then knit 2 together. Notice we are decreasing 1 stitch before our decreases. So knit 11. I'm going to knit 2 together. And then knit 29. We're going to slip 1, knit the next, and do our PSSO, pass slip stitch over, and then knit the remaining 11 stitches. Row 9 is a purl row. Okay, so up close you can really see the decreases and how they're starting to form. These are our knit 2 togethers. They make a really nice line. For row 10, we're going to knit 10, knit 2 together, knit 29, and then do our slip 1, knit 1, PSSO, and then we'll have 10 stitches left on our left-hand needle. Row 11 is our purl row. For row 12, we're going to knit 9, knit 2 together, knit 29, do our slip 1 stitch, knit 1, PSSO, and then we'll have 9 stitches left to knit on our left hand needle for a total of 49 stitches at the end of row 12. So here you can see the decreases with our PSSO, our past slip stitch over, and how they match our decreases with the knit 2 together. Row 13 is our purl row, and that finishes up our gusset. So next we're going to just work the foot. Row 1 is a knit stitch, row 2 is a purl. We're going to repeat these rows until our work measures about 7 inches from the color change. If you're working one of our vintage stockings, it may not indicate it should measure 7 inches from the color change. It may just indicate 7 inches from the heel. So make sure you measure in the correct spot. We will see you back here after you've knit those extra 7 inches, and we will begin our last and final week of this knit along. That week we are going to show you how to do the Kitchener stitch and how to do some grafting. Thank you for joining us on our vintage stocking knit along. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media profiles, and happy crafting!